No. We're good to go. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Winter Housing Program update and public input session. Thank you all for joining us here in person and also watching at home on our YouTube channel. We are going to get started. Just a quick update on what our agenda looks like tonight. I'll go briefly over some meeting guidelines. Jessica Holtz is here. She is our Crisis Response Unit Program Manager. She'll be going through the current data and outcomes that we have so far to date on our winter housing program. Then we'll talk about why we're here tonight wanting your public input, and that's the opportunity to extend the program through August 31st. So I'll explain a little bit about why that opportunity came about and get your input on it. And then we'll also talk about next steps and what happens after this meeting. I do also want to welcome some council members that are here tonight. Thank you to Councilmember Goff and Witkovich for joining us. We also have Josh Gapalt, the Vice President of Denver Rescue Mission, sitting right here, that is here to answer any questions, as well as Deputy Chief Randy Darling. So quickly, we are going to have questions at the end of each section. So after Jessica goes through some of the outcomes of the program and some of the data, we'll pause for any questions that you may all have. We do ask that you are respectful to one another. When you do have questions, I'll bring a mic around to you so that people at home can hear your question as well. And we ask that you don't speak over one another. The other thing is just be mindful that there may be people that are watching either tonight or later that have lived experience, so we just want to be sensitive to that. So some background of how we got to where we are. So on December 1st, we had a community input meeting at the Old Recreation Center to explain to you all what the winter housing program, what that all entails, what the partnership would look like with Denver Rescue Mission. Based on that input meeting, council did approve the agreement with Denver Rescue Mission on December 6th at their December 6th council meeting. And that approved the operations to start December 15th, and the original agreement went through March 31st. So Jessica, like I said, will go over some of what the program currently is, some outcomes and some data. We'll pause for questions, and then we'll go over what the extension could look like.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spending your night with us this Thursday evening, both here and at home. So I'm going to go over the winter housing program and the data that we have had. And I want to say that the data that I'm talking about encompasses the first 12 weeks. Later, I have a typo, it says the first 8 weeks, and encompasses the first 12 weeks. So first, a program overview. The program was designed to have 20 full-time participants staying in the old Northglenn Rec Center. Those 20 participants would identify as experiencing homelessness currently and also be connected to an appropriate daytime resource. And the reason that is because then the winter housing program hours are from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. It was also designed to allow for 5 emergency drop-offs by our Northglenn Police Department. So these people do not have to have that appropriate daytime resource, but the intent is the next morning they meet with the Crisis Response Unit for a case management session to see where an appropriate place or a safe place for them to go is. The program runs from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. It includes dinner and breakfast and also case management on a weekly basis. That case management is provided by our community resource navigator. Her name is Jamie Sledowitz. So like I said, here's my typo. It says the first 8 weeks. It is the first 12 weeks that I'm reporting on. So in the first 12 weeks, which is from December 15th through March 9th, we served 84 individual participants. Those individual participants come from both the full-time participation roster as well as our emergency drop-off roster. 1,081 nights of homelessness were averted, which is a really nice number to see. That number is represented by total nights of homelessness averted. So that means if we serve 20 people tonight, then that's 20 nights of averted homelessness. As of March 9th, there were 17 full-time participants currently enrolled. Tonight, the number went from 17 to 18. So we have, as of tonight, we have 18 full-time enrolled participants. So like I said, that 1,081 nights of averted homelessness, that encompasses both the full-time participation plus the emergency drop-off participation. So 77 of those nights were for our emergency drop-offs, and 1,004 nights were for our full-time participants. That 77 nights, that does not mean we've had 77 individually people dropped off, because if a person is dropped off on a Friday, we also guarantee that first case management session, so their emergency status is extended through the weekend, so then they can meet with a caseworker to be able to meet and see where they can actually find success. So those Friday drop-offs do extend through the weekends. We have had 84 total participants. 28 of those have been full-time participants. I'm sorry, I'm reading that wrong. Oh, no, that's correct. 45 have been emergency drop-offs, and 11 have crossed over. So they've been dropped off as an emergency drop-off, and then they rise to meet the requirements of the program itself, and then they become a full-time participant themselves. If we want to look at who we are serving by gender, then mine's so small. 61 of those have identified as male, 22 have identified as female, and 2 have identified as non-binary. When we're looking at the exits, so when people leave the program, what does that look like? We have had 9 involuntary exits, and we have had 13 voluntary exits. Reasons, the top reason that someone leaves our program involuntarily is because of their attendance. So up until recently, we have had a rule that you cannot miss more than 2 nights in a row. And then if you miss more than 2 nights in a row, then you are automatically exited, because that bed could then be going towards someone who is going to be using that bed. With the comings and goings, everyone, we just kind of locked that down, and now you can't miss any nights, because we didn't know who was still using the program, if they had moved on. A lot of our people are working, as I have said, so on those cold nights, if they had a day off the next day, then they would purchase themselves a hotel room, so they would have a place to be during the daytime. And so we just didn't know who was coming back, so we've locked that down to no missed nights unless they communicate beforehand. Of course, if they want to go buy themselves a night out of the shelter, go, by all means do it, but just let us know beforehand so we know what to do with your belongings the next day. We had one person have to exit due to substance issues, and again, this is not a sober living environment, but it is based on behavior. So that person was not able to attend to their behavior that evening. They were asked to leave. They were given a 3-day suspension, and then they actually found other places to go, so it's an involuntary that turned into a voluntary. And then we had one relationship. It was a couple, and they decided that they weren't going to stay together, and one person found a place to go stay with friends and family. So our voluntary reasons, the top reason is that the time doesn't work or the location doesn't work with their schedule. So if they are working elsewhere, they don't have accurate transportation to get back and forth due to the bus line system. So a lot of our people work in food industries, and so if they work outside of this area and then they're trying to get back and the bus lines aren't cooperating with trying to get back and then being able to sleep and then get up the next morning by the time that the program ends, then that was an issue for those people, so they found other accommodations. Another relationship conflict, they didn't want to stay together. One person decided to double up with a friend, and then one person also became housed. I am happy to say that as of today, we have our second person that signed their own lease, so that's awesome. So they have a move-in date later this month, but that's not in this data. What happens with our emergency drop-offs? That's That's a question that I had when we started this. If we're not allowing emergency stays, what's going to happen to those people? And really, by providing case management that next day has been pretty eye-opening. So a lot of people have become displaced here. It's a high travel corridor. And so we have actually reunited 3 different individuals with family members across the country, which was pretty exciting. One person was here that didn't have their cell phone, didn't have their ID, so there's no way for them to buy a plane ticket or get in touch with their family members because they didn't have their family members' numbers memorized. So we were able to track family members down across the country. Jamie was able to track family members down across the country and reunite those people. We have assisted them with medical care. So we had one person that had recently been in a fire and was trying to recover, not the Marshall fires, different fire, and has still had wounds. And so we were able to get them into a medical respite program. One person was fleeing their home. We were able to get them into a longer-term domestic violence shelter. And then behavioral urgent care has been used for some people that were experiencing mental health crises. And then we were also able to enter some of them as full-time participants. It's also noted that this is a person's choice to engage in that case management session. If they just needed a place to sleep, our officers said, this is a dangerous situation for you outside, let's get you over to the shelter, and then they decided to move on the next day on their own accord. They do not need to hang around to meet with that case manager. That's their choice. So the social supports that we have seen through case management that's been really beneficial and that's been provided. ID assistance, birth certificate assistance, SNAP assistance, so that's what is now used to be called food stamps, phone applications, providing a mailing address to be able to get vital documents. We've assisted with auto repair, transportation assistance. Some of our members have started engaging in churches because we do have quite a few volunteers from faith-based organizations, and they've started attending services. Engaging in support groups, some around substance abuse treatment. We have Denver Recovery Group. A couple of our clients have engaged with them. Assisting with making doctor's appointments with primary care physicians rather than using emergency care, attending court appointments or getting people back on track with their probation officers, family reunification, signing people up with therapists. A lot of times people just know Community Reach Center, and as a lot of people know, that can sometimes be a couple month-long wait to get actual treatment. So looking at other providers around here that people can be connected to. And then also just providing some of that research. When you are experiencing homelessness and don't have consistent access to either phones or internet or research-based equipment, then just sitting with someone for an hour and saying, what is it you want to be looking into, and helping them do that research and having that technological know-how is pretty huge. When I go to a lot of our support meetings through other municipalities or other organizations that serve the same population, we constantly talk about the digital divide, and that was exacerbated through COVID when a lot of services moved online or appointments were now needed, or it was telehealth appointments, and people don't have access, one, to a phone, second, to consistent phone numbers, or third, to the internet. Then a lot of those services were no longer accessible to people who live on the streets. So that digital divide grew, and so just providing a space to minimize that has been huge. When we're looking at our employment and retirement assistance, so some of our clients are in the age where they're able to apply for their retirement. So getting them connected to Social Security, which is very difficult. That's part of that digital divide. So getting people onto their Social Security online and then helping them apply for their retirement has happened. We've had quite a few of our participants go to the Work Options program over at Health and Human Services, which is a culinary program. It pays you $100 per week as a stipend, and then it also helps you earn 10 certificates towards that you can put on your resume, and that's all based in food safety. So that looks pretty great on a resume. Both of our graduates that have actually completed the entire program have gone on to get their own full-time employment. Again, we sit with people and help them build their resumes. We help them with email registration so they can apply for jobs. We have one gentleman that just got a job today, and he has been trying for a long time, doesn't know how to access his email. We sat with him, got him an email. He actually went and applied for the job in person. They said, yes, you got the job, but you have to go back and online and apply online as well. So we got that done today. So he already had the job, but he has to reapply. So job applications. So when I'm trying to quantify that qualitative data, what I did was I looked at if a person obtains a job, or if that counts as 2 points, and if a person went into a job training program, that counts as 1 point. And I looked at all the steps forward for the average full-time participant. This is not our emergency-based participants. And the average step forward for the full-time participant has been 0.94. So almost a full step forward for each of our full-time participants, which is pretty big. When we look at housing assistance, we're doing housing applications with individuals. We are doing budgets with individuals. We're doing that housing research with individuals. Where are they working? What does the transportation look like around those places they want to live? How can they access that on bus routes or through their bikes or foot? And then also, what are alternatives? There's a thing called Sunshine Partners, I think that's called it, and you can apply to live. So we as homeowners could open up our homes and say, we'll take in someone for over the age of 62, and then they can apply to live there for usually around $400 a month. So just helping them do that type of research. Oxford Homes, which is clean, sober living, that's peer run. We do that type of research. And then also just helping people explain the difference between Section 8, emergency housing vouchers, affordable rentals, and then all the various types of transitional housing. A lot of people will come to us and say, I've been on Section 8 wait list for about 4 years, and I have to explain, if you did not reapply every single year, most likely you are no longer on that list. And so we start over. And so, so really just a lot of that knowledge base and constant follow through. So through that, we do have one person, as of March 9th, we have one person fully housed. 2 have identified housing that they actually want to go into, which is what one today turned into a lease. 4 identified housing supports and how they're actually going to support themselves outside of the shelter program. When we're looking at our calls for service, this was a big question before we opened the program. What does the calls for service from our police department look like? This data, when I put this presentation together, this is based off of data that I had from Denver Rescue Mission staff. These are the calls that have been implemented or acted on by the Denver Rescue Mission staff. What have they needed help with through our police department? Through that, it's 0 calls for safety concerns, 0 calls for disturbances, and 5 calls for medical regarding 3 different individuals. Yesterday, I pulled our stats from working with our police department, and we've identified that it's more approximate about 4 calls per week when we look at total calls for service. And that also encompasses the alarms that go off when people have, if you remove the alarms going off from people going into the old rec center and not being able to deactivate the alarm fast enough by staff, or our medical calls, that wipes out about half of those calls. And then it also encompasses things such as duplicate calls, and it also encompasses things such as traffic accidents outside of that address that the police asked to be responded to. So moving forward, Deputy Chief and I are going to be looking closer at that data so we can have more accurate numbers. But there's still 0 calls for safety concerns. So we did confirm that before coming to this meeting. But I just wanted to be transparent about those calls for service. An unexpected win we have found is the community engagement. We do have calls for service every week regarding people who want to provide service. We have a lot of people providing weekly meals. They come in to volunteer, people who have volunteered with Denver Rescue Mission for years, and they were so excited to have something here in our local community. People dropping off donations of toiletries, socks, winter clothing, doing our grocery shopping, coming in and just serving meals and spending time with the residents living there. So that's been a really great unexpected win, is that we have a lot of community engagement on that positive side, just wanting to get involved and help. So that's been really fun. And with that, we're going to stop and take questions on what's been going on up until now.
Who has a question?
Thank you for sharing all this. This is amazing data. You guys are doing an amazing job. My questions are kind of technical. Have you gotten up to, so you said you had 18 as of tonight. Have you gotten up to 20? Have there been times you've had 20?
We have hit 20 participants in a night. It is a fluid number. We do have, like right now, I said we have 18. I also have 2 people on the wait list that are waiting to get in next week because that's when their schedule allowed for it. Because when we interview someone and they say, I want to move in, then we say, okay, what date do you want to move in by? And then we'll hold that spot for them if it's not out of the question. They can't be like 3 weeks down the road. But if they say, I can be there by Wednesday because right now I have a hotel stay that gets me through Wednesday and I'd rather use that until it's up because I paid for it, my family member paid for it. So that number is really fluid. To hit a full capacity, we would need to be an emergency shelter where we allowed walk-ins, because then you can have that open door, okay, now we're serving everybody and now it's out. But when you're trying to stay within that 20 and you have to have those program rules around it, then we haven't really seen a need to go much higher than that, and it's been a really nice manageable number. Okay. We have not had to turn many people away.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. And then, like, are the emergency beds, like, pretty consistently full? Like, is that?
I would have to look at our data of how many. So on the cold nights, yes. So on the cold nights, we will. And like I said, if it's a cold weekend, because those nights carry over, if 2 people get dropped off on a Friday and then 2 more get dropped off on a Saturday, then that's 4 of the 5 emergency beds. But on a daily basis, I would say no. So the numbers I get every day, every morning, is how many meals were served. And it's only been a few times that we've hit actually 25 meals served in the morning, which would be that full capacity number. Yeah.
And then, like, if it's a night that there's like 17 of the full-time people and then 5 emergency people brought in, and then there's like another emergency person out there, like, can they jump into one of those beds for a night? Like, is there flexibility there?
There is flexibility. Okay. I don't think we've had to tap into it.
Okay.
That is one of the numbers that Deputy Chief and I were looking at, that people, because we don't have walk-ins, one of the calls for service has been people calling for themselves to then get escorted in. And so that's happened. But then at least we know, what's going on. And it's actually a nice partnership with because we have our clients that we work with, and then Denver Rescue Mission as their own program have their own numbers. So when the police escort someone in, then we can verify information, verify that they're allowed access through Denver Rescue Mission programs, and then we can also verify if there's other needs. So does this person have full ADLs and that sort of thing before we bring them fully in, or if there's another place that the officer could assist with getting them to.
And then the last question I had is, it's more open-ended, but I just, you mentioned with the constraints, there being sort of a time constraints around just people's job and employments and stuff. Have there been any conversations about ways to, I don't know, create more flexibility so that it can work for some of those people, or are we not there yet?
So around the time, like the 7 to 7, you mean? Yeah. Yeah, so we have that conversation on a daily basis. On these cold weathers, so Denver Rescue Mission staff arrives on site at 4:30 in the afternoon, and they leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. This morning, I was talking with Denver Rescue Mission staff, I think it was like 5:45 this morning, and they said, what's the game plan for today? I said, I'm opening our resource room today. So they said, okay, great. If we hold people till 8, then the people who are not going on to work can come see you at 8:30 8:30, so there's going to be a 30-minute gap. And so we're just in constant communication of what the individual needs are. One of my favorite things about working with a shelter that's 25 is that we're able to take the context of people. So we really do know the clients that are there. I know some of them that work those full-time schedules, what are their days off and what support can we build? Can we do their case management sessions on those days off? Of course we can. Can we schedule them for their doctor's appointments on those days off? Of course we can. Is there a really cold day and they want to take care of, a court meeting? Then yes, we'll schedule it for that day. So there are ways that we build that in. The other thing, when I'm talking to people, because we host town hall meetings every other Monday evening, and so I ask for feedback from the clients, what's going well, what are growth opportunities, and they say, they'll let me know their growth opportunities, and some of them we can do, and the other ones I remind everyone, this is group living, not comfort living. So sometimes we're going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to work through it, and they have, caseworkers and a team that they can work through it with. So that's how we address that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
You're
I
welcome.
just want to say thank you because, just looking at, where we were at last year, you one person part-time and, trying to handle and manage like every single need in our community and what Northglenn has built to this point is incredible. And I absolutely hope that we decide to move forward with extending the program.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that comment, and I work for a great city that allows for it all.
I also want to recognize Councilmember Shannon Luke Naramasa joined us right after the meeting started. All right, does anybody have any other questions about the program itself, about the data, outcomes? Any questions for Denver Rescue Mission or Deputy Chief?
The only question should be, it should be extended.
Yeah, so that's
It's
the,
pretty obvious, like, it needs to be extended.
so that's the next part of our session tonight.
Unanimous, like,
Any
but
questions?
It's obvious, you
Yeah.
need it. And hi, folks.
All right, any other questions about the program itself, any of the data, the outcomes, or do we want to get into it? Should we get into it? All right, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks. Yeehaw!
Okay, there you go.
All right, so thank you, Jessica, for giving us some data and outcomes. And if you guys think of any other questions that you have, feel free to ask tonight. But we wanted to talk about why we're here asking for your public input. The reason why we had the hard deadline of March 31st previously is because the Old Recreation Center is tied to the Civic Center Master Plan. The Civic Center Master Plan contemplates a complete redevelopment of the site. And like everything in government, sometimes those agreements are a little slow coming, so we weren't able to sign a redevelopment agreement with Continuum Partners during the deadline of March 31st. So with that, we're now looking at signing that redevelopment agreement with Continuum sometime later in the summer, which means we can extend the program through August 31st. We did get confirmation that Denver Rescue Mission will continue to operate it through August 31st. And really, really happy to say that Adams County, the Board of Commissioners, agreed to fully fund the program through August 31st, which is amazing news. So the question is to our council whether or not they want to extend the program and sign an agreement with Denver Rescue Mission to operate it through August 31st. And so before they make their decision, they do want to hear from the public. And so that's why we're here tonight, to gather any input that you all have, any questions or concerns that you have. I do have one comment that I received over today from an email question, so I will get to that at the end. But if you all have any public input you want to share, since you're all here in front of us.
Oh, you don't want me to start.
Nobody else is saying anything. Okay, thank you.
So we have volunteered for the program, and we brought some meals, and we thought it was a very good experience. And we enjoyed mixing with the folks that are at the shelter, and we found it safe and friendly, and we found them to be very appreciative of home-cooked food. And so we like very much to have the opportunity to volunteer right in our own community. So we're very happy with it, and we would like, and this is me and my wife and my friend Dee, and we would like to continue.
Thank you. Thanks for volunteering.
So I'm Terry from Ward 4. My wife and I have also volunteered over there. We've taken numerous meals, breakfasts, and items over there as they've requested or as they've made notice to us that they need them. We also feel generally appreciative that we have the opportunity to help the homeless. We feel strongly that this should be extended. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
I'll just say one more comment. Is there any voice support? But
I'll wrap it up.
Dwight, you're such a handful. Yeah, I think that like doing this during the winter months is obviously like super important because of temperatures and weather and all of that. But I think that being able to continue this program and then have data from the summer months as well is going to be nothing but beneficial for any future efforts in this entire area, in addition to obviously benefiting the human beings involved with the program.
And then I'll read the email that I received and ask Jessica to respond to it. So this is from today. Hi, I've been a Northglenn resident for 24 years, and I've always loved the Parks and Rec Center, and the same goes for my kids. I'm definitely concerned with the increased amount of homeless people at the park across the street from the temporary shelter and at the nearby stores and parking lots. With a preschool at the rec center and summer camp starting, this is a concern for me and the safety of my son when they take trips to the park. This is not something our kids who just want to play should be worried about, and not to mention if there is any drug paraphernalia left and a kid finds it. I've also noticed a large increase in the homeless that hang out at the grocery store and other stores in the area. I know the homeless population has largely increased and they need somewhere to stay, but those who don't meet the criteria are finding areas outside nearby and camp out. Thank you for taking the time to read this email, and hopefully it is taken into consideration when deciding on extending the shelter for several more months.
Thank you for reading that. So I introduced myself earlier. My role at the city is called the Crisis Response Unit Program Manager. I am not just crisis response for people experiencing homelessness. I'm crisis response for our whole community. So those concerns are also my concerns. What we are trying to do and what the winter housing program was always designed to do was to serve the population that's experiencing homelessness that also has a foundation of support with their own employment or ability to engage in an educational program or engage in their mental health or start building those relationships with their family members to bring in more support that leads to shelter.
Shelter's been doing good work. It's been making the last 9 years.
So what the shelter was never supposed to do, and we talked a lot about this when we were planning it, was the different levels of homelessness. So the first level of homelessness, 2 weeks or less. Second level of homelessness, 2 weeks to a year. That third level of homelessness, that's over a year, chronic homelessness.
Some girl got a job in culinary. Like, it's working.
So that third
It's
level.
working. It's making the news. It's working.
Thank you. So that third level of homelessness is what we often see when people are consistently outside. And so this program was not designed to fit those needs. Our other things that the city is doing is designed to fit those needs. So our consistent case management hours through our open office hours allow people to gain access, and then our street outreach, hoping to build trust with people experiencing homelessness so they trust us enough to come to us and say, this is what I have going on, what can I have going on past that? Also working with businesses to find out how they can increase safety around their businesses. That's another thing that I do alongside our police department and with our business economic team. So trying to get everyone in our community to work together no matter what stage of housed you are. So that's how I would answer that email, that this program is only one thing the city is doing, and if there are other concerns that fall outside of this scope, then I'm always accessible, Jamie's always accessible, she's our community resource navigator, and we do want to hear those concerns as well.
So I'll touch on those concerns a little bit as well.
Oh.
with regard to our people experiencing homelessness, we have to provide the tools for them to be successful, and we're working on those processes through the crisis response unit, right? In order to really affect those lives of the individuals who are chronically homeless, we have to provide some type of service to them. This is the first step of that, right? Through CREW, Jessica and her team are really identifying what those services are and how we're going to work to address that chronic level of homelessness. It's not a short answer. It's not a quick service. It's not something we're just going to fix overnight. It's going to take time. But if we're going to have accountability, even for people that are experiencing homelessness, we can't set that accountability without providing any services to them, without trying to build them back into successful place in society, or at least a place where they feel that they can manage their concerns in their homelessness situation. So the services that are being rendered through CREW are geared towards, this particular program geared towards people that are very, new to homelessness, right? Have certain skill sets, have certain needs. The longer term work that Jessica and her team are doing is really going to start to affect that chronic homelessness, but that's going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that's going to be quick. It's also one of the most easily identifiable levels of homelessness is the chronic homelessness, right? So we see it in the parks, we see it in our different locations throughout the city, and we're working towards ways that we can address that. And it's going to take us time, but they're here, they're in Northglenn, they're in every community in Colorado and across the United States, and we have to work together. And this is just the start of that. It's just the start of the program, it's the start of the process, and we hope that it'll affect that level of homelessness as well at some point in the future.
All right, does anybody have anything else to add? I do want to give a huge shout out, not only obviously to Jessica, but to our police department. They've been an awesome, awesome partner in working through this program with us. So thank you to you
I
all.
got a question.
Sure.
With Adams County hosting the TV show Cops, is my homeless community on the radar?
So I could look into that and we can talk some other time. I don't think we have that answer right now.
Well, you'll see us walking down the streets, carrying our backpacks, pushing our carts. Sometimes we get in trouble at bus stops, but
So I've
I'm
heard,
really hoping that it's not a program that they're coming in to come put the homeless.
I've only heard rumors of Adams County Sheriff's Department bringing that in. I have not verified anything, and I haven't heard anything about the city of Northglenn.
I'm not trying to put you on the record. I'm just throwing it out there.
All right, council members, do you have anything to add before we wrap up? Not to put you on the hot seat. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Okay, thank you. This is Catherine Goff, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, and I do see signs of success for these people who need it. I've also volunteered and brought breakfast to the program, and everyone's been very courteous and appreciative. I have not seen any kind of anything that would cause any concern in my mind. So I hope that enough of the public, it seems like, at least the people here, are in support of the program. I'm for continuing it. I think it would be a great model for something that could be more permanent, whether that ends up being in Northglenn or somewhere else in Adams County. But this is a wonderful chance for our city to shine and to be a leader in this particular cause that we are trying to help all of our residents and make Northglenn a better city. So thank you.
Well said.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Councilmember Goff just said. This is Councilmember Ashley Witkovich. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out and sharing your thoughts. And I encourage everybody who may be listening to get online. And I think you've got a link for the forum. We want to hear from you. Before we make our decision, we're taking everything into consideration. And we just hope we hear from as many people as possible. Thank you.
This is Councilmember Lukman Hiromasa, and I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, for giving your input, as well as those that are online. And thank you to those of you that are here that have volunteered and served food and provided items. It is so appreciated, and I just want to say that I appreciate all of you, and your input is extremely valuable. But the saying goes that you're only one paycheck away from being homeless. I like to look at this as crew being you're only one connection away from being housed, and I think crew is really that connection. So thank you. Your input is valuable, and we will listen to it.
I like that. Crew is your one connection away from being housed. Nice. All right, so Jessica is going to wrap us up through the next couple of slides, and thank you again all for being here.
So the next steps is that there's the open town hall forum, and that's going to be online, and you can put your public comments on there online. And then the council meeting is set for March 28th, which will bring in, that's when their time will be to vote on the extension to August 31st.
I gotta show up there in rec shop, or?
So how to get involved. So you can donate and you can volunteer. And so Paula Ordaz, she is our site lead over at our Denver Rescue Mission site lead that works there every night, I think weekdays. And so she is our perfect contact to ask these questions, current donations that are needed, gas cards, new undergarments for both men and women, gloves, as always, Safeway gift cards, and daily planners and calendars. So one thing that we have found is that when people are starting to organize their life and they're easing back into that lifestyle, then having a planner or a calendar in front of them to make those appointments is really helpful and beneficial. To provide a meal, we do have a sign-up genius, and that's northglenn.org/winterhelp. And so that's been useful for planning those meals.
Are you going to change the name when it's summer?
That is a good question. The name is pending. Yeah.
But are we gonna keep the shelter open till August?
So that's going to be up for public comment until March 23rd, and then on March 28th, that's when city council will vote on it.
I came to the wrong meeting.
No, you came to the right one. This is your time to say your piece and put your comments in and ask your questions.
From the reports I've seen on 9 News, they've had really good success.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that wants to talk about Webster Lake, that's been a shithole for years. It's also the apartments around there, they're a trap house. Don't blame the homeless. The homeless, we flock where we can get help. Unfortunately, I've been watching it from Denver, shutting down Capitol Hill, Aurora, now, Wheat Ridge is kicking people out of extended stay hotels.
So
Welcome to Adams County. The problem is now here.
So these are
So we can either pass the buck or we can appreciate it and embrace it. And then she said, let's make one of the best programs in the fucking country.
Thank you. So these are a lot of the concerns that I also talk about in my Friday open office hours.
But yeah,
Which is a time to continue that conversation.
But
Nope.
I'm here to talk.
Good.
And I don't think private citizens have to be helping out my city in Northglenn. They shouldn't have to be pulling money out of their pocket to help buy people hotel rooms or buy them food. It's kind of the government's job. And then, yeah, I'll see you in June.
Perfect. Thank you.
And with that, we'll wrap up. Yeah, so with
shelter
that.
better stay up.
So we thank you all for your public input tonight. Again, it's open till the 23rd on our online forum, and we'll stick around if you guys have any other questions or concerns or comments. So thank you all very much.
Anybody that wants to talk?